Hello, and welcome to Magic is Real, a podcast focused on the fascinating world of near-death experiences, spirit communication, and all things metaphysical and spiritual. The mission of this project is to share messages of hope and inspiration with others, and to spread the word that death is only an illusion. Thank you for being here with an open heart and mind. I wish you peace, light, and love always. Hello, Magic is Real listeners. Thank you so much for being here. I'm so glad you're here with us. Today, I have with me my dear friend and soul sister, Alana Sweetwater from Los Angeles. She's not from Los Angeles, but she is in Los Angeles. And I have her here today because Alana has her own podcast called The Warrior Empath. And I will have her tell you a little bit about it. But she's very spiritual like I am, and we're going to hit on some spiritual topics. But today, we're primarily focusing on the topic of being an empath, an HSP, highly sensitive person, and more. Welcome, Alana Sweetwater.
Thank you so much. I am really, really happy to be here. I've wanted to be on your show for a long time. And of course, I've just been a huge fan of you as a person for a really long time. And so getting to spend this time together and see your face and just talk about the stuff that we love to talk about.
Yep,
So
that's why
fun.
we're here. And Alana is a brilliant musician. I have been a fan of her music ever since I met her. So I just want to add that into, I'll have links so you can check everything out. As you can see, guitars in the background. She has one of the most cool, unique, comforting voices that I've ever heard. So I just had to throw that in there. So, Alana, I want to know about you. First, if you can just tell us, why did you start your podcast? What is it about? Yeah,
Okay.
start there.
So the podcast is called The Warrior Empath. And I wanted to explain what being an empath is. I've been one my whole life, and I realized that there was no instruction manual, and that growing up trying to fit into a reality that wasn't really designed by empaths is really challenging. And I was inspired by my niece, Kiana, who I recognized early on as being an empath. So initially, I was creating the podcast for her just to have a place where I could sort of record the things that I've learned and the ideas that have come, and then start to interview other people and kind of collect resources and information so that we can learn from each other and kind of build a tribe of sensitive, feeling, perceiving, experiencing spiritual people. The reason it's called the Warrior Empath is because there's always been sort of this misconception that sensitive people are fragile. And I think a lot of us sensitive people feel fragile because we are experiencing so much. And I'll explain a little bit about what I mean by that. But I just want to say first that my belief is that being a highly sensitive person can feel like a curse until you realize that it's literally your superhero power. And since we aren't really taught how to use this power, it can feel like a real problem, a liability. Every empath has heard, you're too sensitive, you're too sensitive. What does that even mean? And so I wanted to kind of flip this idea that being an empath doesn't make you vulnerable and fragile and need to, recoil and hide from the world. It means you have to learn how to work your gift. You need to understand about boundaries. You need to understand about sifting through energy and what belongs to you and what doesn't belong to you, and not taking responsibility for other people's energies. And, there's so many tools that we can learn. And once we know that, we are free to just dance with our gift. It's kind of like, what was that cartoon Frozen, where she has this thing, and at first it seems like a real problem and potential danger, and then she learns how to use it and creates beauty with it. It's very much like that. So empaths constitute about 20% of the population, and they are wired differently. We are wired to take in much more subtle information than the average type of person. And I don't mean average as in not extraordinary in their own way, but we're wired differently. And so An example of that would be while you and I are having a conversation, I will be feeling what you're saying. I'll be feeling the energy behind what you're saying, which might be different than what you're saying. I'm feeling how I feel about what you're saying. I'm also aware of the energy around me and the space around me. And if there's things going on in the world, I'm very much feeling like the collective energy as well. So, for example, when COVID was happening, it wasn't COVID that was freaking me out. It was everybody's fever pitch of fear. And fear creates illness. And so for me, I just took off and went to the desert or went camping. I just really didn't want to be in that vibration. So I created this podcast so that I could talk about these things and help empower people so that they'd feel how extraordinary they are and learn to love themselves and learn the tools for how to really pioneer, because the empaths are the visionaries, the seers, the healers, the teachers, the artists. They are the ones that push humanity forward. So other people are busy in survival mode, which is like other animals doing, and it is the empaths that go to the horizon and look over the edge and say, can you see this? Can you see this? We could do this. We could create this. So Martin Luther King is a beautiful example. I mean, he perceived the reality of what was going on, and he saw it and he felt it and he experienced it. And then he said, I'm looking up here at this. Can you see this? Can you all see this with me? And that's what a visionary does. And that's what empaths are capable of. So I want to be part of the team that supports that kind of empowerment.
This is so great. I'm excited. I love this because that we reconnected over this. Their time had passed. We hadn't had a lot of contact, but then I saw what you were doing, and I myself is a MN. I'm an HSP, highly sensitive person to the point where I was selective mute as a child because I could all the stimulation coming in was too much. I had to shut down and shut out the world because I couldn't handle it because I didn't have the tools. And so I love what you said. And I also know what you said is true about the 20% of us that are empaths or highly sensitive people. One, I now look at it as the greatest gift of my life, even though it has caused me so much pain and difficulty. Now I feel like I'm learning to harness it and use it in a way that feels empowering. And I just feel strong within that. But also in the HSP, the highly sensitive person book, the author talks about how we are the people that were evolved from those in the herd that were put here to sense danger so that we could warn the rest of the herd.
Mm,
So we were the ones that could hear the rustle in the tree or sense eyes on us so that we could warn the rest of the herd and then everybody could run. So there's a very important, I have spirit because when I get together with another spiritual person, spirit just started to come in and now I'm like, great, here we are. So I sometimes get distracted when that happens, but we'll figure out later what this is about. So yes, there's actually a strong biological purpose for us being this way.
mm,
And it's not a defect and it's not a handicap or for us. It's actually something that's just our strength.
mm,
Unfortunately, in this modern world, sometimes all the stimulation
mm.
in the urban world where everything's built up and we're seeing we're seeing billboards and lights and traffic and we're exposed to so much can really become overwhelming and cause us to shut down a lot.
Yeah,
So yeah, that's just kind of what I wanted to say. If you have anything to add to that, please do.
I do. I had recently heard an interview with someone who was saying that being an empath is basically being a raging codependent, and that it's born out of dysfunction, and it's a need to make other people okay so that we feel okay. And I don't entirely disagree with that. However, I slightly do. I really do believe that we are born this way. I truly believe that we are born with just fine tuning. And I understand and agree with what you're saying about, the ones in the tribe. an empath or a codependent will be the first one to find the most vulnerable person in the room and go talk to them. And so maybe we are in that way intended to perceive where's the danger, where's the problem, where's the weak link, where's the and so that's why I think a lot of empaths can feel very tilted towards the negative because we can feel it. And but I don't believe that this is born out of dysfunction. What I think is dysfunction is created when we are like this. And so being bullied as a kid, as I was, or seeing people do terrible things, it's very traumatizing. So it's easy to experience trauma when you are really sensitive in this world that we're living in.
Yes. And on that note, I'm going to say one thing, and then I really would love to hear about your childhood and how you grew up and being what it was like being an empath. And did you know it? And anything you want to share about that. But first, I just wanted to address the fact that I have been diagnosed with anxiety disorder my whole life. I I'm not dismissing medical diagnoses or anything of that nature, but I tend to think unless it's associated with bipolar disorder or something else, I don't really see anxiety as a disorder or a pathology. I see it as a protective mechanism. It's not disordered to feel anxious because you're picking up on a lot of energy and because you're very sensitive. It's
Right.
a protective mechanism, and there's nothing wrong with our brains that we're
Yeah.
so sensitive. So, yeah, I'd love to hear about your background and kind of what informed where you are now, your kind of spiritual journey and learning about being an empath and being a compassionate, intuitive, sensitive person.
Okay. Well, I grew up out in the mountains in the desert in Tucson, Arizona. And my parents both had home businesses. My mom had a hot salsa company on one side of the house, and my dad had a holistic dental practice on the other side of the house. And he practiced craniosacral. And so when I was little, he'd call me over and say, "Hey, put your hands on this person. You know, where do you feel the strain? Where do you feel the problem?" And I was able to feel it, like, oh, there's something with his knee, there's something in his ankle, there's something, where's the pull, where's the tug. And so I'd been training with him through the years, just sort of dabbling in it, but I definitely was taught at a young age to tune into my hands and energy and reading into people. When I was 11, I got my first guitar, and then I started writing songs. And for me, then life became about music, just completely dedicated to writing songs and creating music and being an artist. And formed my first band when I was 16 and played all the bars and clubs in Tucson. And then, started coming back and forth to LA, and my life just kind of went. And all through the years of doing music and making albums and playing shows and all of that, I always had this sort of deeper intuition about things. So people would come and talk to me and seem to be interested in my advice or what I had to say. But I was very locked in on being an artist and being a musician. And so there, for me, there was no other path, no other option. At one point I needed to go to beauty school to I need another way to support myself as an artist. And so I went to school to become an esthetician. And when I was in beauty school and I put my hands on someone's head, that's when everything sort of locked in, like a trifecta, where what I'd learned from my dad about feeling energy, what I learned about songwriting and seeing pictures in my head, and then touching someone, that combination seemed to spark an ability to see into people's pasts and see things that had happened and things that were happening right now. And I just started talking to people about it. Why are you so scared? What's going on? This surgery, you're something with your heart, or oh, when you were a kid, you were like hopping over fences and in gangs, and your dad hit you upside the head on the left side. Just all this information. And at first, I really didn't know what the hell I was supposed to do with it. First of all, second of all, I was trying to be a musician, so this was kind of not in my plan. And at first, I was okay with it. And I started seeing people. And the more I did it, the more I was taught how to do it just by spirit. The more I opened my head, the more information started coming to me and telling me things. And then I started feeling things in terms of temperature on their body. If I ran my hand over their body, and I could feel where it was hot or where it was cold and what that meant. Oh, there's a blockage here, that manifests like this. Or there's heat here, you're leaking energy, that manifests as this. And so I was able to identify a lot of their traumas and things that happen. And then the more that I started to do that, I wasn't needing to touch them anymore. I could do it over the phone. It just kept like evolving and growing. But it started happening all the time, which started to scare the shit out of me. And I'd be walking through a restaurant and just know, like, oh, conversations, things that happen, where they're coming from, what their issues are. It's like I couldn't turn it off. And then there came a point where I was playing a show, and I could feel that the kid in front was thinking about killing himself. So then I couldn't get done with the show fast enough to go talk to him and explain to him why he felt different, and why he chose his parents and why he's having these seizures and what to do about it. And after that, it scared me so much that I decided I don't want to do this. So I called up all the people that were coming to see me and I said, I'm sorry, I quit. Like I'm not doing this. This is way too much and not what I'm trying to be. And then I was put in touch with uh, a friend of a friend's who was very psychic, and she said she'd be willing to talk with me and kind of give me a little bit of lay of the land information of how this shit works. And so she said to me, "You can turn this on and off like a light switch." And I said, "How?" And she said, "You just intend to. You go into seeing mode or you go into civilian mode." Once I knew that I could do that, that was a game changer for me. And I felt like, okay, I can do this, but I'm only going to do this for people who like just come to me. I am not publicly talking about it because I've presented myself as an artist. I've worked hard to build an image as an artist and all this ego shit. And then during COVID, I just started doing more and more and more of this kind of work. And then someone had asked me, can you speak with people on the other side? And I said, I don't know. I've never tried that. And then I tried, and turns out that I was able to. Again, something that I didn't want to tell anybody about. And so all of this I really kept in the closet unless somebody like heard from someone else who already knew. And it was not until probably about 4 or 5 months ago when I said to myself, okay, I'm just surrendering. Like this is my journey. This is my path. I'm more than one thing. I'm not just a musician. I can let go of my ego because the truth is, whether it's music or doing beauty on people's faces, or whether it's doing the soul sessions, which are the kind of work that I do, it's all the same. I'm just here to uplift people. I'm here to love on them. I'm here to help remind them who they are, and help let go of anything from the past that might be limiting their ability to express themselves. Like, it doesn't matter to me which medium it takes, just that I'm a part of the solution and not the problem.
That's so beautifully said. And I know it took you courage to say all of that because when you and I spoke, I didn't know you were a medium. We hadn't talked about it and you confessed it to me. And I asked, are you not sharing this with people? And you had some of the same concerns that I did about coming out about it. I won't put words in your mouth. Tell me what some of your, I don't know, fears, anxieties were about saying, "Hey, I'm a psychic medium and a healer."
I still have trouble saying it. I
Yeah,
really do. Um, to me, those people were like really woo woo and really out there, and like, oh my God, I'm under demonic attack, or like, oh my God, just gotta wear all the crystals, gotta pound on the patchouli. I don't know. Just, I have images of people that I knew as a child that were they seemed pretty off their fucking rockers. And I really never wanted to be perceived that way. And I didn't realize how much ego I had about how I was perceived, I guess, wanting to look good or seem like I have my shit together or whatever. But the fact is, when these things are happening with me, when I'm reading someone or when I'm communicating with someone, it's as matter of fact as this. It's like this kind of conversation, except one of the people isn't in their bodies. Or it's like I'm getting information and it's as if your body is and energy is telling me what that is. And so most of the time, 9 times out of 10, people leave feeling amazing because they've been seen, they've been heard. It's not this scary thing of like, somebody's going to die, you're on a bad path. I mean, I had a half-hour conversation with a homeless kid the other day who I took to coffee just because we were walking the same direction. And it was just such a soulful, beautiful conversation. It's just about meeting people where they are, and the message that I get whenever I'm doing these sessions is always a message of love. It's always about clearing up the emotional, energetic scar tissue and clearing up any misunderstandings or beliefs that no longer serve and just letting it go, which seems easy enough. Sometimes just talking to people, they're able to clear it. Sometimes I need to like use my own energy and pull it out of them, and then I'm very quick to anchor it into the ground so that I don't carry it, because I've made the mistake of doing that too. So many empaths, carry other people's pain and don't realize that they are. So that's an important thing to learn. So I want to teach workshops eventually of how to be a warrior empath, how to use these things. And I really do think being an empath is just the beginning point for all of these other things to be able to open up. I know empaths that see colors and see auras. I know empaths that see future. I know empaths that hear sounds or see spirits. I don't see them, thank God. They come to me very clearly in my mind. If one was standing next to my bed, I'd be like,
Me
fuck this.
too. Yeah.
This is not happening. No, no, no.
No,
So
I don't see them either. Sometimes I ask to see them just because I'm like, maybe then if I see it with my own eyes, I'll be like, there is no question in my mind that this is real, and that I'm not just, I don't know. I don't know what I'm just. But I think sometimes it's that same way that I've had to train to do this work, and they tell you it's really so easy. It's a lack. You don't even have to try. Well, that takes not trying takes a lot of work to finally get in the flow. It took me, same, COVID happened, it was the pandemic, and that's when I started to do the work and I started to learn it. I started to deep dive. I took all these workshops and classes, and yeah, at first I was like, how do I get this information? And I'm trying to get the information. And as you practice and you learn, and you probably found a little sooner because you were automatically receiving this information without even asking to, there comes a point at which I just, I got trust tattooed on my wrist so that when I go in, I just look at it and go, you don't have to do anything. You literally show up in front of somebody and you just trust what you know. You just
yeah,
trust that the information that's coming through is correct. And it's so subtle. And actually, I'd love to ask a question about that from your perspective.
sure.
When you are receiving information, how do you, specifically Alana,
Trust it.
yeah, and know that it's coming from, how do you know what's coming from spirit and what's coming from you?
Uh, I'm so glad you asked that question because that is one of the hardest
I
things.
know.
Okay, so I'll start with something before spirit, which is intuition. How do you know when something is your intuition or when it's your fear? Because they sound very similar. And it's the same with spirit for me. When it is my fear, it will always cause me to contract. It's always a tightening when it's fear. What's he going to do? What's going to happen? It's always fear. And when it is intuition, it's always expansion. Even if it's a hard truth, even if it's something tough to face, it will always feel like expansion when it's coming from your intuition or from spirit, which I just connect as the same. So that's how I know. When it's spirit, it feels expansive, like so expansive that it's beyond me. I also am a little bit of a skeptical person in this regard too, because I've seen a lot of bullshit. And so I always sort of test it. And I've gotten so much information that there is no way of me knowing, just no way. Enough for me to believe. And so I have to be convinced as well. And I've just learned so much that at this point, it's like, how would I know that you had a sky blue car when you were little? How would I know that your dad had an amazing hat collection and that he was, you know, a ladies' man all the way into the old people's home where he died? Like, how would I know this shit?
I know.
And why would I? It's just it's too specific. Um, Now it's not always like I had one of the hardest readings of my life the other night because the guy that died in his lifetime, he had a really hard time communicating. And I couldn't tell if I was just sucking and not getting the information or if he just really didn't want to give it. But everything that he said to me, his grandfather was sitting next to him with his hand on his back and he was saying, "Go ahead, go ahead." And so if I could go back to the reading, I would try to talk more with the grandfather, but the grandfather was there holding the space so that he could talk. And it was really hard for him. And therefore, it was really hard for me. My throat kept clenching up. I kept feeling like I was going to cry. I could barely squeak out words, which has never happened. And I just kept thinking, oh my God, I'm like, is this me? Is this me? Is it them? Like, all I know is the best thing I can do is get out of my head, get out of my own way, and trust that when I align with love, and that is my intention, and that's the space I'm holding, I'm only available for good to come through. And it is always good and right for love to show up and come through. And so sometimes it's hard. I remember once I had gotten another call from a client who was like, "Oh my God, my life has totally changed since I worked with you, and all these great things are happening." And at the time in my life, things were not going that great. And I remember like talking to spirit, and now our communication is just like in my head, like I'm talking to a person. And I was like, what the fuck? Like all these people, their lives are getting better because of this work, but my life is not getting better because of this work. Why? And spirit goes, because they listen to us and you don't.
That's
Like,
funny.
oh, so it's really hard.
Touche.
It's hard to trust when something comes through us that it's divine, I guess. But I'll tell you what, when you're asking me my opinion as Alana, your friend, um, or if I'm sharing something with you, you will sense my insecurities or doubts. You will feel my human like restrictiveness. When spirit is coming through, it is certain. It is dead on. It is specific. It is certain. And there's an unwaveringness to it that I find very comforting. So
Hmm.
I just trust it. If it's making life better for me or anybody else, I'm just gonna go with that.
I love that. And I love hearing from other mediums too, intuitives, whatever you want to call yourself if you're not ready to embrace that yet.
I'm
Is
right.
I know it feels weird. In fact, I kept saying, "Well, I'm a developing medium," and my medium mentor was like, "Will you stop it? You're a medium." And I was like, "Well, I mean, I don't know." And it took me a while to just say, "That's what I am. That's what I do," and I'm so proud of it. Not in a braggy way. Just I'm so fulfilled by it that I really got to the place where I thought, if anyone has anything negative to say about this, then I'm winnowing grain from chaff. The people who get it, and you don't even have to believe in it. As long as you support me, we're good. If there's any kind of hate, well then good. Bye. And I haven't found that to be the case. Every people who love you will still love you even if they think it's weird or if it goes against their religion, they might feel uncomfortable, but you just don't talk to them about it. And I also loved what you said about when you're like, is it me? Am I not able to deliver this message or receive this message? And I learned the same thing. when you're reading, it also can be not just what you're getting, but what you're not getting that informs who this person was. And I finally got to that place after a few readings where I was like, what is wrong with me? Why am I not doing this? When I started to say, okay, why would it be that maybe I'm not getting information here? Because they don't want to share it.
Yeah.
Or they and then I'll say and then I'll go, was this person really quiet in life? Yes. Were they really secretive?
Yes.
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 That is why. I'm not putting it on me. Occasionally it might be me and my energy. I might have a migraine or have a down hormonal day. But really, for the most part, I'm finding that I've never given a reading to a client where I couldn't connect. If I couldn't connect, there was either something blocking it, they forgot the information, or it was because that particular spirit was very withdrawn. Because I know, when you have a strong spirit, it's a lot of times it's young people. The minute someone comes in with this rush of energy, you're like, okay, I know I already, this person communicates well. They're excited to talk. If I don't feel much, I'll say, okay, your grandmother's very reserved.
Mhm.
I can feel that she's very pulled back. She doesn't share a lot. And they always say yes. And that's how you start to learn that that in itself is information.
That's wonderful for me to hear because I'll tell you, I'm still learning and I'm sort of self taught in all of it.
Yeah,
And so my first reaction is always to beat myself up and
me
think,
too.
because especially I don't want to disappoint people,
Yes.
especially if they lost someone. It's just so painful, and I don't want to. I want to help. But you are absolutely right. Like this kid that I was reading for, he he told me, he said, I've never been able to communicate my feelings. That's been part of the problem. That's why I listen to so much music. I wish I had been a musician. I just had no way to get out how I feel. And so it was definitely evident that he's still in the process of struggling. And he said to me, I'm not where my grandfather is yet. My grandfather is
Ah,
further along.
interesting.
I'm in a process of reviewing my life. And so to me, you know, that would imply he's still kind of going through the transitions.
Mhm.
He hasn't elevated yet, but he's being guided. He has a guide, his grandfather. And so, but yeah, I really like hearing you say that because I just thought, what's wrong with me? Why can't I get this? And it made me not want to do it. And
Mhm.
feeling their disappointment or their judgment. It's really weird when people sit down and they're like, okay, what do you got? Like, no, no, he didn't do that. No, yeah. And it's just like,
Yeah.
look, if you're not ready or if you're going to come in all guarded, there's nothing to do here. I'm not here to like do a dance for you. I don't even need to be doing this. Um, it's a gift and it's an opportunity. And I'm very much aware of how vulnerable of an experience it is. I lost many loved ones. I know how vulnerable it is. And having the right information can be life changing. It really
Yeah.
can. And so it's an interesting experience, and it's so weird now to just sort of embrace that it's a big part of my life.
Yeah, learning what you're able to do. How has it changed? I know I think you've always been very intuitive and aware of, I'm assuming, the spirit world, or that there's more to life, it sounds like. Once you kind of confirmed to yourself you had enough evidence, how has it changed the way you kind of go through the world in terms of anxiety and fear, or anything at all that you want to touch on?
Yeah, it completely has changed me. I know with certainty for myself that death is not the end. In fact, the way they've explained it to me is their death day is their birthday on the other side.
Yeah.
So they wear that with a badge of honor. And the way that I've had it explained to me is that it's not death itself that is painful, it is the fear of like, what's going on? What's going on? The fear is what makes death traumatic for people. And so they were explaining to me that it's sort of like when you're being born, how a mother is taught to like breathe and relax and let go and expand, and then the birth goes more smoothly. And spirit tells me that birth is more traumatic than death. So being forced, compressed and forced through this tube, not knowing where you're going. I'm sure it's terrifying, but dying doesn't have to be terrifying. Now it's really hard because we love this. We're here for this physical experience, to hear each other's voices, to be able to touch. And so it's also taught me to just cherish my time here, to enjoy my senses, what I get to feel and see and hear and communicate and share, and just to be alive and to really cherish my loved ones that are here and enjoy every moment of this and not take it for granted, because it can all change tomorrow. And it will all change because this is a temporary experience in this body. So I think it's helped me to wake up a lot to what matters most to me and what really doesn't matter so much to me. I remember years ago, I was waitressing in Nashville, and the chef there was notoriously an angry, hostile person. And they always said to steer clear of him. But one time he called me into the kitchen and he holds up the ticket and he goes, "What's this?" And I said, "Well, it looks like that's an order for a hamburger and french fries." And he goes, "Yeah, but you rang it in wrong." So I go over the computer to see how I was supposed to ring it in. And I said, "Do you realize that you're upset about a 10-cent difference?" And he screams at me, "It's the principal." And I just kind of like giggled and I went, "You know what's serious? Cancer. You know what's not? French fries." And then I just walked away.
I
But the
love it.
thing is, we all get very tense about things in life and we get real rigid. And that rigidity really limits our experience. And I don't want that. I want to get the full experience. I don't want to let my past dictate my future. I want to create a future that's more compelling than my past. And that's hard to do because I've had a very interesting and exciting and loving journey. But I feel like that's the way I want to direct it, is what do I want to create that I feel really excited by? And I feel excited by this. And I also just want to take a second to really thank you, because I've really been enjoying listening to your podcast. I love what you're doing. I totally feel our kindred spirits of just doing the same thing from like different angles. And I've always felt that with you, and just such a mutual love and support and kinship. I just really appreciate what you're doing, that you're doing this for all of us is amazing.
Thank you, my love. I was just smiling so big when you were saying everything that you just did, not just the part about how you love me and I'm amazing. But no, the stuff that you were saying about how this is sort of not changed, but maybe sort of helped you find the way to go through life that's the most rewarding, enriching, and where you can be of the most service and focus on the things that matter and kind of learn to let things roll off our backs that aren't so important. And I was smiling because I'm like, this, it's just the synchronicities between us. I literally just had this exact conversation with somebody. And and it almost was like just different words that you chose, but it was the same thing. And that's exactly what I found, that I have this whole new way of looking at the world now, where everything is magic and I'm not in fear as much. I'm sure I will be when something really scary hits home or I lose someone. And I know that I'll still go through those feelings, but there's this new feeling of I'm not worried because I trust the flow. That's the other trust theme. I trust that whatever's happening is in my highest and best good. And it does not mean it won't hurt. It does not mean it will like turn out the way I expected it to. But I'm a very big believer in you get what you need, not what you want. And that some of the worst things that have ever happened to me or the greatest pains were the best thing for me and my growth. So I really
Yeah.
kind of just am more in present to everything. And I think lately I've just been, there's been this theme of friends being like, well, are you sure you want to do this? And I'm like, you know what? Shh, psst, zip it. I trust myself for the first time in my life. I trust myself with all the feelings. I trust myself to be able to handle the feelings. I don't want
Mhm.
people saying, "Oh, well, don't do this, you could get hurt. Don't do this, you might regret it. Don't take this job, don't do that," because um it might, what if it takes you in the wrong direction? I'm like, there is no wrong direction. There's no wrong
Mhm.
direction because in the end, when our souls cross over, it's all good. It's all good,
Yeah,
and nothing is like, that was wrong. This was right. It's, what did I learn? So
yeah.
there's this excitement about it.
I think that's a really important point because everything that I've been taught is that our past was our curriculum. And it's like if you were going to go to become a doctor, that's a very rigorous and very specific curriculum, especially if you focus in on what aspect of being a doctor. The more specific the curriculum and the more rigorous the curriculum. And so I don't just hypothetically like woo woo say, oh, well, I've learned from everything. No, like I needed everything that's happened to make me this. If I wasn't this, I couldn't do this. And so it was my curriculum. And when we get stuck in feeling victimized by things that have happened to us, um, we aren't able to use it as our empowerment. We aren't
Mhm.
able to glean from it the tools that will make us great. We're just stuck in the pain and the story, and it kind of stops people right there. So even when things happen that are out of our control, if we look at it as that was my curriculum and these things made me great for something, so what is that? And that's how I look at all of this now. And yeah, you're right. Sometimes it hurts and sometimes it makes no sense, and sometimes it's supposed to.
Yeah.
And that's okay. Whatever it is, it's still okay. It's there's what's happening that hurts, but then there's us telling ourselves it's not okay. And that is where we really get fucked up. It's like it's not okay. It's not okay. It's not okay. I don't know what to do. It's not okay. Well, what if it is okay that right now you don't know what to do? That just it just creates some space. And that's something that I try to remind myself when I'm going through it, because of course I know we have things that we want to go a certain way or we would like it to be. Inevitably, we're co-creating all of this with spirit. And so like you said, sometimes the best things happen beyond our scope of even possibility. None of this was what I thought I'd be doing, and I never thought that anything could be as gratifying as music. Tonight, I'm going to speak to a group of about 50 people that meet once a week for gratitude and manifestation. And I just decided, I think I'll bring my guitar and play a song for them. I mean, we get to do this any way we want. And everyone can.
Yes, that is, I love that. And I'd also love the idea of, we're co-creating our reality. And it's really sort of made me see things differently, where I'm like, I'm a part of creating this. My fears are projected out. My uh when I feel good and my vibration is high, I find that I attract more high vibe things into my life. And it's so beautiful to know that we do have some element, we have free will, first of all, but we
Mhm.
also have the ability to, from within, so without, kind of, for keeping ourselves in a state of high vibration, self-love, whatever feelings make us feel good, despite the circumstances that are happening. And I would love to hear you speak about that, because I'd love to know, when we all go through hard times and we all experience pain, it's not as simple as saying, just feel better. Just feel happy then. How do you personally kind of handle that, in terms of, because when you talk about like manifesting, what's your way of doing that
Oh, that's
generally?
well, for me, it's first about getting into deep, deep gratitude and falling in love with what is already. And that this is a mini version of the bigger dream. My house is tiny, but it's glorious to me. And I treat it like a sanctuary, and I always feel really good in here. And in the future, I might have a bigger one. Um, but I polish this place to feel wonderful so that anybody that walks in experiences that. And so to me, it's first of all, what have I got right now to be grateful for? And to really see it. And then to look at what I've learned of what didn't work for me and to think about my future and think, how would I like that to be different? How would I like what would a healthy relationship look like for me? What would a fulfilling relationship look like for me? What would a fulfilling job feel like to me? And what would I be doing? What do I enjoy doing? Um, and so I think that when we're young, we have these ideas of who we're going to be, and we sort of like live and grow into that first initial dream. And that's why there's so much potency in that time period. But I think there comes points in life where it's time to dream a new dream, you know? So dreaming a new dream means the playful aspect of, hey, if anything's possible, what would I want? And not just what would it look like? What would it feel like? I find for me that choosing what it's going to feel like that I'm growing into is more compelling to me. Like, oh, yeah, it'd be great to have, that new car. But what's that going to make me feel? Oh, it's going to make me feel abundant. It's going to make me feel limitless. It's going to make me feel successful. How can I channel all of those feelings now?
Yes.
And if I can channel those feelings now, then I can grow into being that person. I mean, sometimes I'll just buy myself a bouquet of flowers and I feel so rich and so loved and so like beautified from, you know, $7 bouquet. So it's not about money, it's about um dreaming and playing with life and enjoying that process like a child does. Children don't sit there and feel guilty or feel limited while they're imagining what they want or what they're going to do or pretending who they're being. It's just so innocent and playful. When we try to create from fear, like, okay, I need more money, I need more money, I need more. When we're trying to create from fear, the fear is like putting a foot on the gas or the brake, and the dreaming is the gas. So when you're putting your feet down on both the gas and the brake at the same time, it's a shit ton of energy and no momentum. So how do you get momentum? You've got to find a way to extract the fear. So if you can't, then you got to shift your focus onto something else altogether. I mean, there came a point in my love life where I went, okay, I just have to go neutral now. Like, I'm not dating. I don't want to I'm obviously repeating something here that I don't want to repeat anymore. And I obviously clearly need some time alone and just shift my focus to something else that is fulfilling rather than focus on being frustrated or, disappointed about this. And so sometimes you got to change the channel.
I love that you said change the channel. It's so true. And yeah, and knowing that we tend to repeat cycles, and sometimes that's time to put on the brakes, reevaluate, regroup. And on that note, I did want to talk a little bit about empaths in love, because I know even without us having talked about a lot of the specifics in our path, I know that I talk very openly on my podcast about the fact that I am a sex and love addict who's gone through 15 years of recovery. And whether or not you're an addict, there's this thing with empaths where, of course, we love. We just have so much love to give. And sometimes we have trouble setting boundaries. And sometimes we let other people walk all over us, or sort of take advantage of that, either on purpose or inadvertently. So I'd love to hear too about boundaries, because you have talked about that on your podcast too, and how we create healthy love. Being an empath, how do we draw the sort of, not the boundary, but it's a tightrope. I always said there's this medium we have to find, this balance we have to find between trusting and being vulnerable and giving love, which is essential. Trusting, being vulnerable, and giving of ourselves. And you can talk about the pizza analogy that you came up with, but also having boundaries and giving only when we've gotten first and that we're not giving too much ahead of time. So I'd love to hear you speak about that because I have heard you speak about that very beautifully.
Yes, I love this subject.
Me too.
Well, I think you're spot on that empaths, we just want to like love. And when we feel a connection with someone, we don't want to dick around with like, games or um moderate our feelings. But that's very tricky because it's not always safe to just let it all go. And so, but there's a childlike innocence that's just like, oh, there you are, you're my person, I love you, here.
Yes.
And it's beautiful, and it's beautiful in many aspects of life, but in this particular one, it's dangerous, and that's not to produce fear, but it's dangerous in the sense that you don't know who you're dealing with yet. Would you let just any person walk into your house and just make themselves at home? I mean, that could be anybody off the street, and they might look good or they might talk well, but who are they? We know that that's something we need to be conscientious about. But when our heart gets involved or when we feel attracted to somebody, it's just like, I don't want to hold back. And so there's a real maturity that kicks in as you've gotten hurt as an empath, where now a lot of empaths just shut down. They're like, I'm done. I don't want to,
Yeah.
I'm not going to love anymore. Like that's just painful. I can't figure it out. But if you look back through their history, most of the time they weren't that discerning about who they were loving. And yes, we can love everyone, but guess what? We can also love ourselves more. And
Right.
that's the thing. So the first thing, the pizza analogy is imagining that your heart is like a pizza that you keep over there, not on your person, in the trunk of your car, but some people get grossed out by that. And when you meet someone that you really like and connect with, you give them a slice. And then you see how they do with that slice. Like, do they appreciate it? Do they enjoy that part of you that you're sharing? Do they share back? Or do they just wait till you give them the next piece? And so the idea is you give them a slice, you see how they do with that slice. If you feel that they are appreciating it and reciprocating it, then you give them another slice. And that process can go as fast or slow as, falling in love does. But what you never do is just come right out and hand them the whole pizza before you know who you're dealing with. And it's not about being afraid, it's about being conscientious. And this is where I think having an inner child awareness is so important. I used to hear people talk about inner children and it just seems so douchey and silly, but I am in love with the idea of the inner child because that little person is still in here. And when that person feels happy and safe and loved and wanted and heard, my life is better because everything is better. So my job is to listen to her. My job is to protect her. My job is to pay attention to what her feelings are and her needs are, and also to have fun with her. So I'll instruct a lot of my clients to put a picture of themselves on their refrigerator when they were like 6 or 7 so that they can see, like, that's the person you're responsible for.
Mhm.
You're responsible to protect that person, love that person. So when you look at it in the context of that, like I look back on certain people I've dated and I'm like, my inner child would not have felt safe there. She
Yeah.
did, I never felt safe there. And as a person who wants to be like, I'm a strong woman, I didn't realize I needed to feel safe because I was like, well, I can take care of myself. I'll figure it out. I'm not going to take bullshit, blah, blah, blah. But the fact is, my inner child needs to feel safe. I need to know that. And the only way I can know that is when someone shows me how they show up, because words don't mean shit. And so that's why the pizza analogy is so important, because it's like, let me show you how I show up and let me witness and experience how you show up so that I can see if I'm safe to give more here. And again, going back to the inner child, it's not about saying, you can't love anybody, you're going to get hurt. It's saying, hey, let's be really selective about who we have around this child. And let's make sure they are someone that is kind and somebody that can communicate and somebody that, is loving or whatever. For every person, we have different needs, but we got to get really honest with ourselves about what those needs are. Like I said, I didn't even know I needed to feel safe. What does that even mean? Uh, it means that I trust someone,
Mhm.
and that takes a little time. And that's okay that it takes time. I'm not playing a game by saying, okay, we'll see how this goes. I'll give you a bit, and then we'll see how this feels to me. And you know, s- it's life. Sometimes we're just going to plunge in. Sometimes we dip a toe in, sometimes we jump in. There's no right or wrong, there's no answer. But I just think, as a general rule of thumb, seeing if this energy is reciprocated would be really smart to do instead of just handing it all over and then waiting to see.
Yes, that's brilliant, and it's not just in love. I think it's in the world. That's something that I had to work a lot on my whole life with friends, with bosses, with anyone I interacted with. There was always this tendency to overgive, bend over backwards, put my own needs last. And now really in a great place where I'm learning to find the balance between I can still be compassionate and empathic, and I can still be there for people, but I have to find a way to do it that's not draining me. And
Yeah.
so there's a way to do it where I want to give, but I also have to hold back a little
So
in a
some
healthy way. Yeah.
it's being loving to yourself.
Yeah.
And people get very afraid of just open, honest communication. Communicating doesn't have to mean a confrontation. And if we have friends that interpret it that way, they may not be good people to have up close in our lives. Because, for example, if you and I had plans tonight, but I was just feeling completely exhausted, I would tell you, you know what? I really want to see you. And I'm also feeling really exhausted and not my best right now. Would it be possible if we rescheduled, because I want to be able to be really present with you? And if you said that to me, I would say, absolutely. And I'm so glad you're taking care of yourself. And so I only have people up close in my life that value my honesty and trust me with it, you know?
Yeah.
And so that's being loving to myself. It's being loving to the other person. And it's setting a boundary in a sense, because it's like saying, that's not feeling right to me or good to me right now because I really need this. And so I think there's a million ways to do it that are really kind. We can have kind communication. I remember my friend saying, well, I'm brutally honest. And I said, well, why can't you be compassionately honest? Like, why does your honesty need to have brutality to it?
Yeah.
It's not necessary.
That's so true. That's true. Authenticity and just speaking your truth, I'm finding more and more. I'm learning to do that too. And it's been this huge blossoming of I had terror about not confronting, but expressing my needs or expressing what I needed or saying, hey, I'm not happy about the way that I feel that we're interacting here. And that has always been really hard. And my mom always said, just do it. It'll get easier. And I was like, I can't do it. I can't. And it's funny because she was right. The more I do it, the more I find that only beautiful things come from it. If you
Yeah.
approach it in the right way and you're not attacking someone and saying, you did this, you made me feel like this, you just say, hey, in the interest of strengthening this relationship, I would just like to know understand what's going on for you when this happens. It makes me feel this way, but I'd really love to hear your side of it. And what do you perceive as happening? I'd love to hear your point of view. And then you realize that people suddenly open their hearts to you. And then suddenly you have this dialogue where it's like, let's work on this together. Let's talk about it. And it doesn't have to be hard, but for an empath, one of my biggest difficulties in doing that was that I picked up on their energy. So I would automatically worry about their reaction because I'm going to feel it. If they look uncomfortable, okay, now
Yeah.
I'm uncomfortable. Or if
Yeah.
somebody, lies to you and you're like, I want to call them out, but if I can't watch them squirm, it's going to
Yeah,
make
I
me so
know.
uncomfortable. I'm going to squirm. I can't handle it. So I'm just not going to say, I know you lied about that because I blatantly caught you doing it. I couldn't do it. And I don't know, it's still pretty hard. And I realized it's not about, because people would say, well, they'll only respect you more. And I'm like, that's not what I'm afraid of. It's not, I know that. I'm afraid of the feelings.
Yeah, it's a very squirmy
It's
feeling.
really
Uh,
uncomfortable.
I mean, the only way find it, it's like communication is a gift that you give someone who you want close. And so sometimes I don't feel like I need to communicate because I'm like, yeah, the relationship isn't so important to me that I want to work through this with you.
Yeah.
So if it's somebody that I really value, then it's important to me to clear it up. And a lot of times I'll own my part first because it's easier than I don't want to accuse them and get them on the defensive. Even if it's not my fault in my mind, I might say, I really owe you an apology because I think I may have misinterpreted what you said here and I just pulled away. So I'm sorry. Can you tell me a bit more about why you said that and what that meant to you? Because I'm sure you didn't mean it the way I took it. And I just take responsibility first because then it makes it less, built
Yeah.
up.
That's so beautiful. I love that. I think these are the things that we have to learn as we evolve, because these things can be so uncomfortable, and picking up on other people's energy can make us uncomfortable. So
But
it
I'm
really,
not
yeah,
taking responsibility for it.
yeah,
I'm not blaming myself. I'm just owning that in my part of this communication, it's not felt good. And so here's where I was at with it and just kind of open the platform to open the door to speaking openly about it. And another thing is the longer we wait, the more like ammo gets built up. A lot of times if somebody upsets me in the moment, I don't say anything. I, I usually will want to take time and think about it and process it. And sometimes I can sort it out myself. If I can't, then I'll come back and I'll just say, when you said that yesterday, I realized I really took offense and I don't know if that's how you meant it. So would you mind telling me more about why you said it? And then there's ways of coming at things. That's why communication is like, if we could all just study the shit out of communication, it would be life changing. And then there's some people that just won't communicate, don't want to communicate. Those are not people that I like. I love many people who don't communicate,
yeah,
but for my inner circle of my core group, like I need to have that back and forth openness and I need to trust that it will happen because it's what makes me feel safe. Me, the way I
yeah,
am. I was talking to my sister the other day about something that bothered her, and I said, talk to him about it. She's like, no, I really don't think I need to. I think that's just kind of how he is and who he is. And I was like, okay. I mean, for me, I need to, but that's the way that I am. That's why I was a singer and a songwriter. I had to, like, I felt like I had to get it out, but maybe not everybody does. But I do think it's pretty healthy to. Yeah, we're not going to change other people. I coached somebody to speak up today, but not because I wanted her to teach somebody a lesson, but because I wanted her to hear herself stand up for herself. Because her inner child was hurt by what this person did, and to say, hey, just to let you know, that was really hurtful how you did that. And I just want you to know that really didn't feel good. What's wrong with that? I think our inner
yeah,
child, thank you. Somebody stood up for me.
yeah. Why is that so hard? I have sort of one closing question, but then a short question. So I want to know, what's your favorite? What's the thing you appreciate most about being an empath yourself? And it could be a million. I mean, it could be a whole stream of consciousness, whatever you want to share about that.
I think it's just that I can find a way to connect with and relate to almost anyone.
Hmm.
I can find something that I can understand. And I think that it is true that above all else, we want to feel understood or at least seen and heard. And I feel like I can offer that. And there's something about that that I really take pride in. Um, and I love that. I love being able to and feeling comfortable to talk to most people, not everybody, but many. And probably being a waitress helped with that too. But I think that that's one thing. And the other is I love being an empath because I feel like I can see and experience beauty in a way that is very much childlike.
Mm-hmm.
And I can help remind people to connect with that. And there's something really wonderful about that too. And that doesn't mean childish. It's like I am adulting pretty well, but I will always be like a kid in my heart because it's important to me. It's important to me to have fun. It's important to me to see the beauty and to connect with people in a real and authentic way. There's nothing that bores me more than superficial conversations. Like I literally want to dip out whenever that starts going on. I don't enjoy it. Even if we're talking about something seemingly interesting, it's like I either want to feel you or I want to go do something else that's interesting because I'm here for this experience. And so I don't know.
You said that so well. It's exactly the way that I would have. I think you and I, the reason that we've connected so much is because we're both exactly that way. And we both connect with people very easily of all walks of life. We're those people that like have never met a stranger. And it's very easy for me to get right to the meat with a stranger. And I went to this huge dinner party last week, and a friend of mine said, "Oh, that must have been so scary because you walked in not knowing anyone." I said, "Wasn't scary at all. I walked in and I was like, hi, I was like a little kid. What's your name?" And I'm like, this is the best. And by the end, I'd gotten all these numbers and learned all these deeply personal things about people. And it's just easy. I'm very, very grateful that I just have that ability to connect and to make people feel comfortable. And it makes my life very exciting, as you said, and it helps you see the beauty when you get to really connect on a deeper level.
Yeah.
So the last question I have, and I ask all of my guests this, is just this is a huge question. So just whatever comes to mind. What do you want people to know about like just about their nature, about their soul, about life?
What do I want people to know? I want people to know they're not alone. I want people to know that they're loved and that they're precious. And I know that sounds sort of generic, but I just feel like isn't that what we would want for our children? Isn't that what we would want for anyone that we love? Um, I would want people to know that that's how spirit loves us and that our time here it can be just a gift and it can be really fun and it can be beautiful and we can be who we really are. There's a way to do it.
That is so beautiful. Alana Sweetwater, thank you so much for being here today. I'm going to put all your links below. This has been such a gift to me, and I know everyone will love to hear what you have to say. You have such great wisdom and insight, and I want everyone to hear your music. So we're going to put links to that below as well. But thank you so much, my love. I can't wait to see you when I'm in LA.
I can't wait to see you too. And thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to talk with you and all of your friends here and just talk about what we love.